Let's Take This Outside with Marianne Iveson, the podcast where she speaks to athletes, outdoor professionals, and scientists about why they connect with nature.
Before we begin, I want to share that I'm currently grieving the recent loss of my mother on June 25th. This episode was recorded before her passing, and listening back, I was struck by the depth of connection in this conversation about love, loss, and healing through nature. Today, I'm joined by Melissa Hafting, a passionate birder, photographer, and mentor whose deep love for birds has helped her process grief and find strength. Her work blends conservation with advocacy, creating space for more diverse voices in the outdoors. From rare bird sightings to breaking down barriers, Melissa shows us how birds can heal and connect us in powerful ways. Please welcome Melissa Hafting. Melissa, welcome to Let's Take This Outside. Thank you so much for joining me. We're going to talk about your favorite topic, birds.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Melissa, I want to talk about, you're from Vancouver, one of the most beautiful places in Canada. Where did your love of nature and the outdoors begin?
Well, it really began with my father, who took me out birding at the age of 5. He took me camping, getting out into nature as much as possible. He bought me my first field guide. And from there, we would come home and tick off all the birds we saw in our outings, like going to the Rifle Bird Sanctuary. And from there, it just grew and grew, where I wanted to see more and more birds in the field guide. And I even surpassed my dad's love of birds.
You did as at a young age or later in life?
I was at 5. Oh, later in life, for sure. Yeah. I mean, he started me at 5, but he was an all-around naturalist. But I really got into it even more than he did, for sure.
That's a pretty young age to start birding. Most people don't do it until they're like 40, right?
But now, actually, there's lots of young people starting it, like, you know, in the Young Birders program I run, you're seeing more and more young kids getting into birding.
Okay, I'm going to ask you about the Young Birders program. It sounds amazing later in the episode. But I do want to bring up, if I'm sure you see this meme and this joke that by the time you're like, 40 or 50, you suddenly shift to noticing birds, and the next thing you know, you have like 6 bird feeders. Have you seen this meme around? Have you seen this joke? What do you think of this? It's so like typical about, getting, I'm putting in air quotes, getting older, right? When you start noticing birds, right?
But I really think that it's not really factual, because I was young. There's lots of people in my Young Birder program who are into it. I enjoy feeding birds, and, it actually isn't just for the older people.
I completely agree. Quick question. I lived near Point Pelee National Park. Have you ever been? Because it's like a haven for birds.
Yeah, I was just leading a bird tour there in this past May. So I was just there. I just got back. And it's amazing, Point Pelee. All the birds, all the people. It's an amazing place. Every Canadian birder should go there.
Can you take us back? You mentioned like your childhood and growing up with, your dad showing you birds. But can you take us back to when you first discovered birding? Like, what really drew you in and what kept you coming back?
Well, I think my spark bird was a black-capped chickadee the first time it landed on my hand trying to eat some seed. And what keeps me coming back is just, watching these birds. It just brings a lot of joy, comfort, peace, relaxation. It helps you with stress. It helped me, as you know, from the book, in grief. It's just an outlet to just get out there and, just relax your body from, we live very stressful lives. So that's what makes me keep coming back. And birds are just so amazing to see all the stuff they do in the trees, the sounds they make. They're so beautiful. Yeah, they just lift me up.
Did you find like when you were a kid, it was more just like this genuine curiosity, which I'm sure you have as an adult now, but now like as an adult, do you appreciate it different than you did as a child?
I think, yeah, I appreciate it because I remember the special moments that I shared with both my parents with the birds. And so I can see like the amount of love that they gave me comes out in the way I love to go look at birds and take care of the environment. Things like that is how, I appreciate everything they showed me in life. And my love of birds was sparked by them. So, and the support they had from me as growing up as an adult to keep pursuing birds as my hobby and passion. And that's why I think it's so important to mentor youth, and because it makes young people keen to protect the environment, and they're the ones that are going to be here when we're gone. So it's really important to have them as future stewards of the land, engaged in wanting to protect it.
You've spoken openly about how birding helped you process grief after losing both your parents in kind of a short amount of time. Can you talk about that, and how did being out in nature provide comfort during that time?
Yeah, it did, for sure. My mom died of breast cancer, so while she was dying, I went out and used birding as a way to help cope with this anticipatory grief and the pain that I was going through and watching her suffer. And it just helped me to, I could cry out there with the birds and they wouldn't care. It was just, a place where I felt safe and a place where I felt comforted. Nature comforted me and helped me to see there was still beauty in the world and that I could keep on going. And after they passed away, both my parents, birding has really just been an outlet for me, a place of grace and peace where I can just go out there and feel, like I said, safe, comforted, relaxed. And sometimes I feel sad out there when I'm watching the birds. And like I said, I cry. I still cry. I still miss my parents very much. And but I also, birding, it just lifts me up, and it just brings this joy that nothing else in my life brings as much. And it's just a beautiful hobby where birds are indicator species. So, they tell us what's wrong with the environment and why we need to listen. And they've given me so much gifts in life. That's why I wrote this book, as a thank you to them.
Do you remember like a particular moment or like a bird encounter that felt like maybe more healing or transformative for you? Was there a moment where you're like, it just felt extra special?
Yeah, I think when my mom was dying and she was looking out the window, I had put her hospice bed. She died at home near the window so she could look at the bird feeders in the yard. And there was a few American goldfinches that had sit on the feeder and were feeding. And she turned and looked at them, and she just, like, her face lit up and she smiled, and it was just beautiful to see that. I'll never forget that, how the birds brought her peace when she wasn't able to talk anymore. And she was I think she passed away a couple days later. And it just was a memory about how the birds brought her joy in her journey and her transition and suffering. So it was really nice to see her light up that way. And I'll always be grateful to the birds for that as well.
Do you remember your parents' favorite birds, or what the ones they really, really liked, or the ones, maybe a rare one that they were able to see while you were around?
Yeah, they didn't chase too many rare birds with me, but my mother loved bluebirds, mountain bluebirds. So that was something that we always would go and do drives to Merritt to see the bluebirds, or if they were rare birds in Vancouver, they were annual but uncommon, and we would go and see them at places like Iona Regional Park. And she just loved seeing bluebirds. So every time I see a bluebird, I think of her. My dad, he loves the snow geese. So we would always go watch we get these big wintering flocks of snow geese in Vancouver and in the Vancouver area and Delta and stuff. And we would always go and look at those in Delta and Richmond. And just every time I see the big flocks and I hear them calling, just makes me think of my dad.
Your photography in Dare to Bird is beautiful. And you actually just mentioned it, but I do want to touch on what made you want to put this book together. At what point in your birding journey where you're like, I think I need to put a collection of birds together and share my story and share my love?
After my mother died, that's when I started writing this book. Through my grief, birds had helped me so much, and I wanted to share that with others because I had to add more after my father died to the book, but it was initially started after my mother died. And grief is still a very taboo subject. People want you to get over it and, the impact of grief. But I wanted to share how birds and getting out in nature helped me and could help other people, even people who haven't experienced the loss of a loved one. One day, unfortunately, they will. And so it can help that way. And also for people just suffering with depression or chronic illness, it can help in that way, or just daily stressors of life. It's not just for people who lost a loved one. But yes, after my mom died, it was the spark that made me write this book to try and help others.
And what did your dad think while you were writing this book?
Yeah, he was very proud and he was really excited to read it. And it was bittersweet when it came out because he passed away before the book was published. But at least he knew about it. And he was really excited and proud. And I had told him a bit about what was in the book. And he knew there was going to be a tribute to my mom. And there's one to him in there now. So, I had to stop and rework the book after he passed away, but it is very bittersweet that he didn't make it to see it. Hopefully he sees it wherever he is now.
Absolutely. What are some of the most magical or surprising birding moments you've experienced in the field?
I've had so many magical moments, but I think working with the kids and seeing their excitement, like when we went on a trip in the Okanagan and they saw their first ever flammulated owl, and seeing this little owl that's pretty rare and uncommon, just to see it, the kids were just so excited, and just seeing that joy on their faces and the excitement and all the questions about this owl was really, really cool. And just there've been moments like that with white-tailed ptarmigan on hikes that we did. We did several hikes until we found this white-tailed ptarmigan. And when we found it, the kids all gave me a hug and knocked me to the ground. They were so happy. So those types of moments are the ones that I find are most magical.
So what I love about this is mentorship seems to be like a core part of your work. Tell me about the young birders and how that started and why it's so important to you.
Yeah, it started in 2014 when I went out birding. I noticed all these young birders birding on their own, these youth birding on their own. And I wanted to get them together to form a group to take them out in field trips, because a lot of them didn't even know the other existed when I asked them. And they said, yeah, we want to do it. That sounds like a great idea. So we got together and I rented a van and I took them out on these field trips across the province to places that they don't normally see in their own backyard, like birds they don't normally see in their own backyard. They just loved it. And many of them from the first year I started in 2014, they've graduated now. They're still friends. A lot of them are still friends. And they said the program changed their life. And a lot of them are studying or have studied bird biology, have become ornithologists and biologists, or work in environmental sciences. So I think it has sparked a love of nature in the youth. And I mean, the youth are really, good conservationists. They want to protect the planet. They give me hope because they're so passionate about it. So yeah, it's a huge passion of mine, looking after and mentoring children to get them out into nature, because it really helped me so much in my life. And I didn't have anybody other than my parents in the birding community that really took me under my wing to get me out into nature. And before I started this program, there was no program like it in British Columbia. So I think it is something that is really important for the teenagers. It's from 12 to 18. And my program is very inclusive for BIPOC and LGBTQ plus community. And so I think that's a very important thing, and I'm proud of it.
Let's Take This Outside with Marianne Iveson. Let's Take This Outside now has a newsletter. Keep up to date with outdoor news, events, and great discount codes and deals from our partners. Sign up today at letstakethisoutside.ca.
Have you seen like a certain kind of child that this attracts? That really wants to join, are you seeing every kind of kid come into your program?
I'm seeing every kind of kid, but I think that most of the kids, they really do have a keen interest in nature and birds before they even meet me. So, but I have had some that have never picked up binoculars before, and they get into it. But most of them are already into it somehow.
I think that's great. Without maybe, making sure we're protecting privacy, but is there any stories of a certain kid that you really kind of totally transformed over your program while like connecting with birds and other children who enjoy it?
I think there's been quite a few stories of like that. Right? I know one of the children, their parents told me how badly they were bullied at school, and that in the program this was a trans child, and they became more confident in themselves. They got more friends from the program, and they're doing really well now. They're in university, and they still give me updates. The child, he's not a child now.
Aww.
as an adult, but they still want me to go birding with them, and they're just really happy in their lives. So that just makes me touches my heart to see that that child turned out so well, is no longer suffering from bullying, is more outgoing, still loves birds, still chases rare birds, goes out in nature, has tons of friends, and that is a nice success story to see. And there's lots of children in the program who graduated and who are still in it, who are doing really well. One of the parents told me that one of their child has attention deficit disorder, and that he's no longer on medication because he finds that birding is helping him so much with his anxiety. So it's nice to see those success stories.
You kind of mentioned it earlier in our conversation, but bird habitats are under threat in many parts of the world. Like you mentioned, that birds kind of like feed back to us how the world is doing. What do you wish more people understood about the connection between birding and conservation and what they're telling us?
I wish that more people would understand that when we lose a bird species, that it's usually because it's a sign that there's something wrong in our environment, or when a bird species is very much declining. And you can see that, I can see it even in my life, how many swallow species are declining, there's less bird song. A recent study just came out by Cornell on May 1st about how North American backyard birds are declining so rapidly. And any birder who's been out daily can see over the years that, there's less bird song, there's less birds, there's less habitat for these birds. So of course, they're going to be decreasing. There's more wildfires. There's from climate change, birds are dying. There's more pesticide use. All these things are a wake-up call for us to start getting ourselves together here to protect the environment, because, it may be affecting the birds first, but it's also going to come back and affect us. So, in these wetlands we need, the trees we need to breathe, everything. So we're all connected. So it's really important that we take heed of the messages being sent and really protect our ecosystem.
How do you approach the tension between, sharing these birds and the risk of habitat disturbance or crowding, or making sure things are under control?
Well, I think there's ways that you can enjoy it peacefully and respectfully. Like, people just stay on trails, don't go encroach on habitat too much, taking out all your garbage, things like that. Like, you can enjoy nature respectfully without destroying habitat. There is more and more people being interested in nature, especially since COVID. I've noticed that more birders, because I'm an eBird reviewer, and I'm seeing more and more birders submit to eBird that I've never heard of. And that's because I think a lot of people are finding that the joy of birding, it's a free activity for the most part, and it's making people happy to get out and de-stress. And I think that the more people interested in birding, the better it is actually for the environment, because it gets more people passionate about protecting the birds and environment they see and want to enjoy.
I totally agree with you. Like, the amount of people and environmentalists I've had this podcast who are saying, like, it's really good to get the younger generation and people in nature, because then they're like, oh, they actually appreciate it. They actually like, oh, yes, we should probably protect this.
I agree fully. Yeah.
I love that your Young Birder program is, very inclusive. You have BIPOC, you have LGBTQ. Can you talk about maybe some of the challenges you faced as a woman of color in birding and how you turn that into change?
Yeah, I think as a Black woman, I've experienced racism and sexism in the community.
It's wild.
Yeah. But, and I haven't always felt safe in nature. But that's why I've been really passionate about making birding more inclusive for all, not just for the young birders, but for all, so that birders feel welcome and safe and included. Because if you don't see anybody that looks like you, and people are saying comments or not making you feel welcome, you're not going to want to be in this hobby. Even if you love the birds very much, it can turn people off. I think if I didn't have such a passion for birds, I probably wouldn't have stayed in the hobby, because of some of the things that happened to me, especially early on, getting racist emails and just really, not being treated the same was very hard in the beginning, but I persevered because it's such a passion of mine. And the birds just gave me so many gifts that I wanted to make sure that everybody got those gifts. So I do think that language is very important, and being inclusive and actually following through with DEI language on websites for organizations that were really hard for years to get them to put up have now finally put them up. So following through on what they say that they are inclusive is, putting people of color on boards and committees. All those things are signs to show people of color that they're welcome.
What kind of impact, and you already have this amazing impact, but what kind of impact do you hope Dare to Bird will have on the next generation of nature lovers and photographers?
Well, I hope it will inspire people to get out in nature, to protect nature, and to be thankful for nature, and get their own children in the future into it, and family members and friends, and just find it as a book that can help them with daily stressors, grieving, mental illness, and to help them find some peace and joy in their lives.
What advice would you give someone who's curious about birding, who it feels like maybe a little bit intimidating? There's so many birds to learn about, or unsure where to start. What would you say?
I would say to just get out there and look at birds in your own backyard. You don't need any fancy equipment. Some of the cameras and binoculars and scopes are expensive, but you can rent from your local library, at least in Canada, a free pair of really good binoculars with a free field guide. You can rent that, take it out for a month, give it a try, just look at the birds around you, listen to the songs. You can use Merlin to help you with listening for songs. It's an app.
Oh, yes. Tell people about Merlin. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, Merlin is an AI app that helps people hear what the birds, listen to the birds that they're hearing and tell them what species it most likely is. It doesn't always get it correct, but most of the time it's fairly correct. And then, just getting out there with your binoculars and looking at nature and checking them off in the field guide to see what you see. And you can do the good thing about bird watching, there are birds everywhere. So you can do it in your backyard. You can do it in urban settings and, more rural settings, mountains, oceans, everywhere.
Do you know what I like about birding and people who do birding is that you have no choice but to slow down. I find in nature, and I'm very guilty of this, I'm like, go, 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 hiking, get to the top, blah, 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 blah. But there's something about birding that just slows you down and makes you so present in the moment.
Yes, I agree.
Do you have a favorite bird or a bird that you haven't yet seen in the wild?
Oh, there's lots that I haven't yet seen in the wild that I would love to see.
Really?
All those amazing birds in Papua New Guinea and things like that. Birds of paradise, they're called. I would love to see one of those. But my favorite bird is a rough-legged hawk. It's a hawk that's actually really declining in Canada. They nest in the Arctic and are getting affected by climate change with things warming up too much. But they're my favorite. They come in a dark morph and a light morph, and they hover over their prey. They're absolutely beautiful birds.
You have Dare to Bird out, which is this beautiful book, but is there any other projects you're working on or anything that you're hoping to bring your work in the future?
Well, I'm hopefully writing a second book, and I'm working with my young birders. I have lots of tours, I'm going to Newfoundland soon in July with Avocet Tours, so I'm also a bird guide. And lots of exciting things like that in the future.
I highly recommend to buy this book for the bird lover or potential bird lover in your life. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your beautiful story.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor.
Thanks for listening. For more Let's Take This Outside, go to letstakethisoutside.ca.
Produced and distributed by the Sound Off Media Company.